Hello everyone, welcome back to Penguin Powered Games. Today I want to do another video on does it play well on Linux, and this time it's covering Civilization 7. So I've had over 60 hours of playthrough so far on Civ 7, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. And I just wanted to add this to the list of videos that I'm making on does it play well on Linux, covering very specific criteria of 7 categories. In a moment, I'll launch the game and kind of show you some of the options as well as I'm talking through some of my ratings that I'm giving it. So the criteria that I'm basing this by is installation and startup, performance. Number 3 is stability. Number 4 is online functionality. Number 5 is controller keyboard input. Number 6 is graphics. And the last one is audio. So the first category is installation and startup. And as you can see here, I've got Steam up. And if you go to show game details here, you can see that runs on this computer via Steam Play, Steam Linux Runtime 1.0. So this game is native Linux, as most Firaxis games are. Huge applaud for that. That is amazing. I love to see a company or a developer support Linux. That is fantastic. So whenever I go to properties and go to compatibility, I don't have to run Proton or anything like that. It just uses native Linux libraries, and the game just works. So huge kudos for that. And I've had no issues on startup or anything like that. With that being said, we're going to give this rating a 10, and we're going to launch the game. Alright, and as you can see, the game actually launches super fast. This is actually one of the fastest launching games I've ever seen. So that's super good. I'm very happy with that. And also, I've been playing Confucius, if you can't tell already. Number 2 is performance. So the game plays amazing. The game plays great. I get very, very good frames per second. I almost get too good of frames per second because it's a 4X strategy game. This game does require a somewhat moderately hefty GPU, but it's more CPU dependent than GPU dependent, like most 4X games. It does have a frame rate limiter, which I'm going to talk about here in just a little bit. But as far as performance and just kind of navigating through the menus, going through the going from one place to the map to the other, I don't see any sluggishness, no slowdown. When I zoom in, I can zoom very far on different buildings or different people working on farms and whatnot, and warriors. There's no real slowdown there. Your performance is really going to be impacted mostly with the type of CPU that you have in between turns. So 3D Vcache with AMD CPUs really help a lot with this. Of course, you want to, if you can throw more horsepower at it, that's great also. But the L3 cache, that's where you're going to see the most benefit with this game. So I'm giving the performance a 10 as well. Number 3, stability. This one's actually really easy for me. I'm giving this a 10. I've never had a crash on this game playing over 60 hours of it so far. I primarily play on, or I've only played this. I've tested the Proton build a little bit, but I pretty much only play on the native Linux client, and I've never had a crash. So this one's really, really easy for me. 10. Kudos to Firaxis for that. Number 4 is online functionality. So I'll be honest, I generally don't play 4X strategy games to play online. That is not my focus. However, a lot of people do like it. So if you go to multiplayer, one thing I really like is the options that you get here. So you have LAN, so local area network. You can play on the internet with, you know, random people or your friends or whatever. You can also play Hot Seat, which was recently added in patch 1.41. So if you don't know what Hot Seat that is, that's essentially when you're passing the controller or you're passing a keyboard and you're playing on the same computer. That's really good for like families, for spouses, things like that. So yeah, that's great to see that inclusion. I know that made a lot of people happy. If you go into internet, you know, it's on a Saturday in the middle of the day. You're not going to find a ton of people. Probably tonight you'll find more people, but you know, this is I play 4X games and Civilization specifically for single player against AI opponents. However, you can easily pick up a multiplayer game here with relative ease. I've went into a couple of lobbies. I've created games. It's also crossplay. So when you set up the game, you can set it up crossplay. You can play on playing on a Linux operating system, playing against someone that has a Switch or maybe a PlayStation. That's fantastic. So I absolutely can't see any fault in their multiplayer. They're also hosting their own servers, and instead of doing trying to open up like a port, doing ad hoc peer-to-peer. So yeah, for online functionality, that's a 10. That's really easy. I think they did a really good job with that. The fifth criteria that I wanted to talk about is controller, keyboard, and input. This one also is fairly easy for me. I think they have, let's see, I'm not sure if they have, I don't even know where the controls are for remapping keys. Yeah, here, you can have, I thought there was controller support here. So you can have a controller and play it that way if you want. I typically play Civilization games with a mouse and keyboard. I was watching a video with one of the developers pass a controller to another developer, and that just made me put my head down. I was just like, what are you doing? Like, you play Civilization with a mouse and keyboard. And now I'm very biased, so if you play with a controller, you know, play how you want to play. I've just played PC games for a very, very long time. But I have no issues with playing with a controller or keyboard or anything like that. So that one's also easy. I'll give this a 10. So far we have all 10s. That's really good. Until we come to our next category. And this is something that I want to talk about a little bit. So if you've watched some of my games, you may have seen me rant about this a little bit. We come to graphics. So I will say that the graphics are beautiful. You know, like I said, you can zoom in, you can zoom out. You get good frames per second. They're actually really gorgeous. If you look at, and I also like the art style of the game quite a bit as well. But if you look at graphics here, I mentioned frame rate limiter. So this is where I have an issue. My monitor gets, as you can see in the FPS at the Steam right here, I'm getting 60 frames per second. And I have a frame rate limiter at 60. Now my monitor gets 240 hertz, so I don't use the VSync. And right now the frame rate limiter is working. It's essentially keeping my FPS around 60 FPS. However, when I start a game, it forgets this. I immediately jump to over 200 frames per second as soon as the game launches and I get into the map. And then I have to go back into the options, and I don't change anything. I just hit confirm changes, and then the settings take effect again, and my FPS goes down back to 60. With it being a native Linux game, to me this is a bug that needs to be fixed. So, you know, that's one thing that I probably will ding this for. The other thing is, if you look at the different upscaling anti-aliasing mode, so if you look at these options, MSAA is multi-sample anti-aliasing, and so when you see the little like sharp edges around buildings and things like that, these little jagged edges, anti-aliasing will actually smooth those out for you. And so if you use MSAA, it does that at your rendered resolution. So I play on a very high resolution at 3440 by 1440 on ultra widescreen. And so I use raw horsepower. There's no upscaling or anything like that. I just use pure raw horsepower of my video card to render the image at that resolution and do anti-aliasing. That works, and that produces a beautiful image. The other option that you have is AMD FSR 1 plus MSAA, and the reason it's plus MSAA is because FSR 1 does not support anti-aliasing where FSR 2 does. So you have to use the upscaling technology along with the anti-aliasing. The issue that I have with this is I've done some comparisons on MSAA plus using the FSR, and the FSR 1 produces a significantly less quality image than MSAA. Your frame rates certainly get boosted, but the image quality is not as good. Now, if that was the only thing, I would be okay with it. However, when you load the game on Proton, you can see when you look in these options, there's an option for FSR 3, which is significantly, by leaps and bounds, better than FSR 1, and it supports anti-aliasing. So, because the native Linux client doesn't have an option for AMD FSR 3, which is what I would most likely use, because in my comparisons there's very little visual fidelity difference between that and MSAA. Plus you get the added benefit of a huge boost in your FPS. Because of that, I'm going to ding it a little bit because of not supporting FSR 3 on the Linux client, as well as the frame rate limiter seems like a bug to me whenever I actually load the game. So I'm going to give this an 8 as far as graphics, and it's only for those reasons. The last thing I wanted to do is talk about audio. The game actually uses your system's audio, so whatever you have it configured, if you have it configured for a headset, if you have it configured for 5.1 surround sound or 7.1, whatever you might use, so it uses your system's audio, and then you have all of these different volume controls for music, master, sound, cinematic, interface, voice volume. You have lots of choices here. And I've had no issues with crackling or anything like that. So I think for audio, I have to give it a 10. I don't have any problems with the audio. Okay, so with that being said, what should, I guess you're wondering, since we dinged graphics and everything else got a 10, what's kind of the final score? I'll just say overall, I am exceptionally happy with how this game runs on Linux. I don't think you can go wrong if you play on Linux and you want to play Civ 7. I think it plays wonderfully. I did count a few points off on graphics, but on average, I tend to round up. I don't want to give like decimal number ratings or anything like that. So this actually ends up being like a 9.7. So I'm going to round up to a perfect 10. I think this game is fantastic. It is a 10 in my book. However, there are a few things that I would like to be, fixed. FSR 3 and maybe the frame rate limiter bug I would like to get fixed. But that's my rating, and I hope that you guys are enjoying Civilization 7 as much as I am. And so, yeah, I just wanted to kind of make this video and talk about how it plays on Linux, and I hope you check out some of my other videos. Until then, happy gaming, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.